District leaders often ask, who are your tutors and what actually happens in a session? We asked a beloved and longtime Grow tutor, Michael Remesic, the questions districts care about most. Here's what Michael had to say. Introducing Michael.
So, Claire, thank you so much for having me. My name is Michael Remesic. I've been a tutor here at Paper for, about 3, 4 years now. And a bit of my background would be that I have a PhD in chemistry. I was originally a chemistry professor at Central Connecticut State University for a little while. And prior to that, I did a few years of teaching at the University of Arizona. After which I segued into a government position at New York Municipality at Department of Labs and Research there, where I worked for about 5 years during COVID. And naturally, during COVID, a lot of institutions shut down, school systems being one of them. And I ended up becoming a member of the paper tutoring team. And I just haven't looked back.
Managing different learners in one small group.
Unfortunately, I don't think there's an answer that satisfies all situations. It's kind of something that you have to always adjust to on the fly and kind of read everyone's personalities that day and react to it accordingly. So if someone is a little bit behind the other students, I always encourage them to send me a direct message because not everyone wants other people to know that they're struggling or have a question. So I always encourage to have open dialogue, at least privately with me, to which I can address whatever needs to be addressed in either a private setting or ask their permission if I can call on them and go through the problem with me together. That way I get them involved and also encourage the social dynamic of the group. On the other hand, if there is someone who is a little bit more advanced or going through the exercises a bit quickly, especially with math, there's always extra problems to give via chat. Or also, at the end of these lessons, there's an extension activity. And I'm always happy to give that a bit earlier privately to a student if they do need a little bit more of a challenge or, something to work on as we give time to the other students in the group.
Responding to disengaged or disruptive behavior.
So if I'm able to recognize this, especially early on in the session, it can always open up dialogue with them via chat, make sure everything is okay. And if they're willing to engage or at least tell me a little bit about what's going on, it's not something I have to be incredibly blunt with. I could just say something like, hey, how's your day going? Do anything fun and try and at least get them to open up in that regard. So I could kind of learn a little bit more about the situation that we find ourselves involved in with that lesson. If they do need a little bit more help, if it's something a little bit more, challenging or safety issues and whatnot, it's always something that we could message other people, the higher ups about, and make sure that the help and resources are there that's needed.
It sounds like you really know the students in order to maybe reach out and have them be receptive to your outreach. It takes a little bit of a foundation of trust to have that happen. I mean, my next question was about developing relationships with students. We think that relational continuity really matters. So maybe you can talk about that as far as perhaps your opinion on that relational continuity, or maybe even give an example of the difference you've seen in a particular student on week 1 versus week 12, and perhaps the change that they've gone through as an individual.
Why continuity and relationships matter.
I think it's important to establish these relationships, these dynamics early on. So with our first sessions, typically being a welcome session filled with a bunch of great, questions, icebreakers to kind of ease the tension if there is any, get to know each other a little bit so everyone feels a little bit more comfortable. I like to let them know right away that I'm more of an, easygoing type of person, and I like to keep the atmosphere light. I like to have fun. I like to, encourage camaraderie within the group. like to joke around as long as, the work gets done. I'm happy, to keep it light. So I think once that's established, especially with students, they tend to respond well. Of course, not everyone has the same learning approach or comfortable in that atmosphere, but it tends to go well. And from that initial welcome session, we're then able to build on that, right? And as since we keep seeing each other 2, 3, 4 times a week, we're really able to, build not so much a friendship, but at least a trusted relationship between ourselves.
Escalating safety concerns.
I think it comes out loud and clear in your grow sessions. I've seen that, and I think it just really helps the student feel seen. I think it's helpful that they see you so often, and it just continues to build that foundation. And I think there is a direct connection there between that academic focus relationship and then their academic gains later on. You actually mentioned this. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. You touched upon this. When it comes to behaviors where escalation is needed. And that kind of got me thinking about perhaps your relationship with the adults in the room, the teachers that are there. And it might not be a specific example, but what would be, I suppose, the protocol if there were a concerning behavior that you felt might be a safety concern, for example, that you would need to escalate to the teacher or somebody else within the district?
Oh, okay. So naturally, since it is a virtual setting, I'm not there. It could be hard to figure out if what you're reading, if it's a message or what someone's saying is a joke or not. Could be hard to differentiate between the two. But we always err on the side of caution. And of course, all the sessions are videotaped. So if it needs to be watched again, that can be done. I have had situations where I had to let my higher ups know, especially when it comes to students mentioning being bullied or, along those lines. So that's something that's automatically directed to the supervisor on session, who then follows up with, her bosses. And if help is needed immediately, then the student could get it. Also, the school system is made aware if there is such a problem.
What happens instructionally in a grow session?
So during those 5 minutes, sometimes a student might come in early or so, and which we could start talking, kind of catch up a little bit. And then, so I like to take those first couple of minutes, kind of, reestablish how everyone's doing. And as the lesson begins, I try to ask if everybody remembers what we did last time, because tends to be the case that these lessons could build upon each other. So it's always helpful to kind of give a brief recap at the beginning of the session. To which case we have an icebreaker that kind of get us talking about the material in an informal way, which is always very nice because, at least for math, a lot of students tend to say, well, when am I going to use this in, the everyday world? So that icebreaker is a great example of how we could encounter such situations for whatever the material may be that day. And after which we go through introducing the material. We start with some key terms, definitions, and we segue into guided practice where I might demonstrate an example or two, and then slowly transition to where they pick up more and more of the slack of the problem, and then eventually into independent practice. So it's kind of like you're touching upon before, a gradual release of information this way.
The power of active instructional exchange.
Yeah, I do think it's important, especially if they're trying to get through problems with me or versus, talking amongst themselves, because that's also another, kind of team building exercise. So even though it really opens the doors to other notions that are being built upon within the lesson. And it's also great to see the effort and the growth within the individual, especially the excitement that comes from when they're working amongst themselves or within the group, or, especially in English language arts, when sometimes people are defending their ideas, and that's really what it's all about, I think. So Absolutely. A great atmosphere for ideas to be exchanged and even defended.
Yeah, that's fun. And you kind of bring up a good point because we talked about like these individual behaviors and distracting behaviors, and maybe it's good to level set that we're working with small groups. There's groups of two, three, four, and that can lead to like, oh, well, they're just going to distract each other, or they're going to giggle, or you know what I mean? But there's also
Mm,
like another side of that where they're going to have that exchange with one another, learn from each other, feed off of each other. So I think with that comes like some really positive opportunities for kids to learn amongst their peers as opposed to just with the adults, right?
absolutely.
The most rewarding part of being a Grow tutor.
For me, the most rewarding part is at the beginning of a lesson, I always ask if they've seen the material before, if it's a no or there's initial complaining about the difficulty of it, but by the end of the lesson, there's just excitement. They had fun. They did really well on their quizzes. They're ecstatic about their performance. For me, that's always the best part is seeing the individual growth at the end, even of a 30-minute session.
The relationship students build with their tutor.
Probably get to know these kids pretty well. I mean, oftentimes these programs run up to about 12 weeks or so on average. You see them multiple times a week. Yeah, you become a figure in your life. Do you think they go home? Do you think they go home and tell their parents, like, oh, Michael's so cool, or give them updates
I
about
like I like to think so because I feel like we usually have such a good rapport that it would be hard not to, especially like we were talking about before, a couple students with their dogs. I mean, a lot of students open up in such a way that I like to think that we kind of bring each other into each other's lives, even outside the computer screen.
Thanks for watching. And a special thanks to Michael Remesic for the time spent on this interview and for his commitment to grow students across the country. If you'd like to learn more about high-impact tutoring, schedule an exploratory call to see if Grow might be a good fit for your Tier 2 and targeted support needs.